The word beautiful hovered in the air like it didn't belong to me, like it had been meant for someone else standing behind my shoulder. I remember the mirror in front of me catching my expression before I could control it. Eyes wide, lips slightly parted, a tremor beneath carefully applied lipstick. The mirror had always been honest with me, sometimes cruelly so, but that night it felt like it was keeping a secret. I hadn't planned for it to go this far. It started quietly, almost harmlessly, with curiosity that I buried under layers of routine. I used to stand in front of that same mirror, wearing clothes that felt like a uniform I hadn't chosen. Every morning was the same, neutral colors, stiff lines, a face I recognized but didn't fully inhabit. And every night, when the house fell silent and the world loosened its expectations, I would open the bottom drawer. Inside it was a folded dress. It wasn't extravagant. Soft blue, simple cut, fabric that moved like water when I lifted it. The first time I touched it, my hands shook so badly I had to sit down. I told myself it was just fabric, just an experiment, just a private moment no one else would ever see. But the mirror saw. The first time I wore it, I avoided looking up. I focused on the feeling instead, the way the fabric rested against my shoulders, the unfamiliar freedom in the way it fell around my legs. I remember whispering, "It's just for tonight," as if I needed permission from the empty room. When I finally looked up, the mirror didn't laugh. It didn't reject me. It simply reflected someone softer than I expected. That softness terrified me, because it felt right. Weeks passed like that. Secret nights. Careful folding. Erasing every trace before morning. I learned how to blend foundation from online tutorials watched with the volume barely audible. I practiced steadying my hands while applying eyeliner, blinking back frustration when it smudged. I studied my own expressions, learning how a slight tilt of my head changed everything. The mirror became my silent collaborator, showing me possibilities I had spent years refusing to imagine. But mirrors don't follow you outside. The night of the compliment wasn't supposed to happen. I had promised myself I would keep this part of me contained, safe within walls. Yet something in me had grown tired of containment. The dress no longer felt like a costume. It felt like breath. And breath demands air. I chose a different outfit that evening. Not the blue dress, but a cream blouse and dark skirt I had ordered online with shaking hands. I styled my hair carefully, letting it frame my face in a way that softened the angles I used to resent. When I stood in front of the mirror, fully ready, I felt an ache in my chest that wasn't fear alone. It was longing to be seen. I almost turned back at the door. My reflection looked braver than I felt. "Just walk," I whispered to myself. "If it's too much, you can come back." The hallway outside my apartment seemed longer than usual. Every footstep echoed like an announcement. Outside, the world didn't stop. Cars passed. Streetlights flickered. People moved in their own orbits, unaware of the earthquake happening inside my ribs. I kept my head slightly lowered at first, hyper-aware of every glance, every shift of movement. Were they staring? Did they know? Could they tell? The strange thing was, no one gasped. No one pointed. Life continued, indifferent and enormous. And then I reached the small cafe on the corner, the one I'd visited dozens of times before, always as someone else. The bell above the door chimed as I entered. For a split second, I considered leaving, but the warmth inside wrapped around me, grounding me. I stepped up to the counter. The barista, a woman I'd exchanged casual smiles with for years, looked up. Her eyes scanned me briefly, not suspiciously, not dissecting, just noticing. Then her expression softened into a bright smile. "You look beautiful tonight," she said, as naturally as if she were commenting on the weather. Beautiful. Not sir. Not confusion. Not hesitation. Just beautiful. My throat tightened, so suddenly I thought I might cry right there between the pastry display and the espresso machine. I managed a small thank you, but inside, something cracked open. Because she didn't know. She didn't know the drawer, the rehearsals, the mirror debates, the nights of doubt. She saw only what stood before her. And what stood before her was enough. I took my coffee with trembling hands and sat by the window. The reflection in the glass stared back at me again, softer now, almost luminous under the cafe lights. The mirror had followed me after all, hiding in every reflective surface, asking the same silent question it always had. Who are you when no one is watching? That night, for the first time, I wondered a different question. Who am I when they are? I sat by that cafe window longer than necessary, letting the word echo inside me like a fragile melody I was afraid to interrupt. Beautiful. It didn't feel like a compliment about symmetry or style. It felt like recognition. And that was far more dangerous. The coffee cooled untouched between my palms while my mind replayed her tone. Casual, sincere, unburdened by suspicion. She hadn't squinted. She hadn't tilted her head in confusion.
She simply saw me.
But did she see me? Or did she see what I had carefully constructed? The mirror in the window caught my reflection layered over the dark street outside. I studied the curve of my cheek, the careful arch of my brows, the way my posture had shifted without me realizing it. I wasn't pretending in that moment. I wasn't performing. I was existing. And that realization sent a ripple of fear through my chest. Because existing meant permanence. On the walk home, every compliment I imagined felt heavier than criticism ever had. If someone mocked me, I could retreat. I could tell myself it was foolish, temporary, a phase to be outgrown. But kindness? Kindness made it real. Kindness made me want more. At the apartment door, my hands hesitated over the keys. The hallway light flickered softly, humming its quiet monotony. Once I stepped inside, I would return to the world of drawers and folded secrets. I would remove the blouse, wipe away the lipstick, and watch the reflection shift back into something expected. The thought made my stomach twist. Inside, I stood again before the mirror. The room felt smaller somehow, like the walls had leaned inward to listen. I touched my reflection lightly, fingertips against cool glass. They don't know, I whispered. And the mirror seemed to whisper back. Does it matter? I began removing the earrings first, setting them down carefully. Each piece I took off felt like peeling away a layer of courage. The blouse followed, then the skirt. By the time I wiped away the makeup, the person staring back at me looked familiar in the way an old photograph looks familiar, recognizable, but distant. I expected relief. Instead, I felt loss. I sank onto the edge of my bed, staring at the folded cream blouse draped across the chair. I thought about how easily the barista's words had settled into me, how natural they had felt. Why did it feel more authentic to be called beautiful than handsome? Why did one word warm me and the other echo hollow? The questions had always been there. I had just learned to outrun them. Growing up, I mastered the art of alignment, matching my laughter to the group, lowering my voice when necessary, straightening my shoulders when someone said, "That's more like it." I didn't rebel. I adapted. Adaptation earned approval. Approval earned safety. But safety came with silence. The blue dress in the drawer wasn't rebellion. It was confession. A quiet acknowledgement that somewhere beneath years of adaptation, something softer had survived. Something patient. That night, sleep didn't come easily. I lay staring at the ceiling, replaying the compliment over and over, not because of vanity, but because of possibility. What if that wasn't a one-time accident? What if the world outside wasn't as hostile as I had scripted it to be? And then the darker thought followed. What if it was? The next morning, routine returned like muscle memory. Neutral shirt, familiar stance, deeper voice. The mirror resumed its old role, reflecting a version of me that functioned efficiently in daylight. But now there was tension in that reflection. It felt like standing between two songs playing at once, one loud and practiced, the other softer but more honest. I could perform the first without effort. The second required courage I wasn't sure I possessed. All day at work, I felt hyper-aware of myself. The way I crossed my legs, the subtle tilt of my head when I listened, the cadence of my speech. Had these things always been there? Or had I only started noticing them because I had allowed myself to see? When a colleague clapped me on the back and said, "You're looking sharp today." I forced a smile. The compliment slid off me like rain on glass. Sharp felt like armor. Beautiful felt like skin. That evening, I opened the drawer again. But this time, I didn't approach it with secrecy. I approached it with decision.